Myself, G. Mahesh Kumar, Assistant Professor of Chemistry. Today, in the environmental sustainability, we are going to discuss about the biodiversity and what are the values of biodiversity. Biodiversity and what are the values of biodiversity is a topic of discussion in the today's lecture. Biodiversity and what are the values of biodiversity. Coming to the topics, biodiversity and values of biodiversity. Biodiversity, definition of biodiversity, and what are the values of this biodiversity. Coming to the biodiversity or biological diversity, it refers to the range of life forms present on the earth. Biodiversity or biological diversity refers to the range of life forms that are present on the earth. Okay, what are the different types of living organisms that are present on the earth is called biodiversity. What are the different types of living organisms that are present on the earth is called as biodiversity. In the biosphere, atmosphere, lithosphere, like that biosphere, okay, it is comprises of a complex collection of innumerable organisms is known as biodiversity. Biosphere comprises of complex collection of innumerable organisms is known as biodiversity, which constitutes the vital life support for survival of human race. Which constitutes the vital life support for the survival of human race. It includes plants, animals, microorganisms, genes that they contain, ecosystem of which they are in a part. It includes millions of plants. Okay, by the biodiversity, it contains millions of plants, animals, microorganisms, the genes they contain, an ecosystem of which they are present or comes under the biodiversity. What actually the biodiversity or biological diversity is a range of life forms present on the earth is called as biodiversity. Biosphere comprises of complex collection of innumerable organisms is known as biodiversity. Okay, it constitutes vital support, life support for the survival of human race. It includes millions of plants, millions of animals, millions of microorganisms, and the genes they contain and the ecosystem or which they are in part is nothing but biodiversity. Coming to the everyday around the globe, species are being lost, others are being pushed towards the extinction. Okay, every day around the globe, species are being lost, others are being pushed towards the extinction. Earth biodiversity is more threatened today than any other time in the past. Earth biodiversity is more threatened today than any other time in the past. During last 200 years, 100 to 10,000 species being extinct in each century. During last 200 years, how many species has been extincted? There are 100 to 1000 species has became extinction in each year. But evolution also brought forth new life forms, replacing the species that were lost. Today we are losing about 1500 species every 2 months. Okay, how many species are lost due to this? About 1500 species are being losing every 2 months because of this loss of biodiversity. One is every day around the globe, species are being lost, others are being pushed towards the extinction. Earth biodiversity is more threatened today than any other time in the past. During last 200 million years, 100 to 1000 species became extinct in each year, but evolution also brought forth new life forms, replacing the species that were lost. Today we are losing about 1500 species every 2 months. Economic terms, economically there are two types of values of biodiversity. They are use value and non-use value. Okay, there are two types of biodiversity values. Values of biodiversity are two types. One is use values of biodiversity. Next one is non-use value of biodiversity. Use value and non-use value of biodiversity. Economically, there are main two types of values of biodiversity. One is use value, another one is non-use value. Use values are direct values, indirect values of biodiversity, option values. Use values are direct values, indirect values, and option values. Non-use values are bequest value, willing to pay for its existence, existence value, knowing its existence. Bequest value, willing to pay for its existence, existence value, knowing for its existence. Total economic value, again it has been divided into two types. One is use value, second one is non-use value. Use value are direct use value, non-direct, indirect use value. Direct use value are change in output of marketable goods. Change in output of marketable goods, cost-based approaches, hedonic prices, contingent valuation, travel cost. These are comes under the direct use values of biodiversity. Indirect values are cost-based approaches, contingent valuation, change in output of marketable goods. Change in output of marketable goods. Indirect values are option value. One is these are direct, indirect, and option value. The direct values, change in outputs of marketable goods, cost-based approaches, hedonic prices, contingent valuation, travel cost. In the indirect values, cost-based approaches, contingent valuation, change in output of marketable goods. Option value, contingent valuation, hedonic prices. Okay. Existence value or contingent valuation, contingent in bequest value, contingent valuation. These are total economic value. A total economic value is again divided into two types: use value, non-use value. In the use value, direct use value, indirect use value, option value. In the non-use value, existence value, bequest value. In the existence and bequest value, contingent valuation. In the bequest value, it is also contingent valuation. Direct values. Direct values are concerned with the enjoyment or satisfaction received directly by biological resources. Direct values are concerned with enjoyment or satisfaction received directly by the biological resources. They are relatively easily observed and measured. Okay, these direct values are relatively easily observed and measured, often by assigning prices to them. There are two types: consumption value, non-market value, productive value, commercial value. Okay, there are two types of direct values. One is consumptive value, consumptive use value. Next one is productive, consumptive use value. Next one is productive use value. Consumptive use values are non-market value, productive use values are commercial values. What are the consumptive use value? Consumptive use values. Okay, consumptive use values are values of nature products that are consumed. Values of nature products that are consumed directly, such as firewood, fodder, and meat. Okay, which we are going to take directly without any help. It's nothing but consumptive value of biodiversity. Values of nature products that are consumed directly, such as firewood, fodder, meat. In other terms, other words, products which are consumed directly without passing through the market is called direct values of biodiversity. Consumptive use value seldom appears in national income accounts. National income accounts. Consumptive use values are most important point of consumptive use is that some rural communities closest to the forest. Some important point of consumptive use is some rural communities closest to the forest or other national areas can propose that through the sustainable harvesting of wildlife species. Sustainable harvesting of wildlife species. Hunting, direct consumption, example for collection of berries, mushrooms, herbs, plants, all these are comes under consumptive use value of biodiversity. Most important point of consumptive use is the some rural communities closest to the forest or other natural areas can prosper that through sustainable harvesting of wildlife species. Hunting, direct consumption. Example, collection of berries, mushrooms, herbs, plants, all comes under the consumptive use values of biodiversity. Productive use value, productive uses. product use value of biodiversity, products that are commonly harvested for exchange in formal markets. Products that are commercially harvested for exchange in the formal markets. Each species is valuable to the each species is valuable to the global collection of genes, species, habitats, and ecosystem is a resource that provides for the human needs for now. Okay, global collection of genes, species, habitats, ecosystem is a series resource that provides for the human needs for now. Okay, it is also essential for human survival in the future. Okay, product use value also essential for the human survival in the future. They often only value of biological resources that are reflected in income accounts. Product uses are the commercially harvested for the exchange in formal markets. Each species is having the valuable to the humans. The global collection of genes, species, habitats, and ecosystem is a resource that provides for the human needs now. It is also essential for the human survival in the future. They are often the only value of biological resources that are reflected in the income accounts. Income product uses such as animal skins, ivory, medicinal plants, honey, beeswax, fibers, gums, etc. All these are the examples for the product use values of biodiversity. Products such as animal skin, ivory, medicinal plants, honey, beeswax, and gums, flow, fibers, etc. All these are the examples for the product use value of biodiversity. These are commercially harvested for the exchange in the formal markets. Each species is a valuable to the humans. Global collection of genes, species, habitats, and ecosystems is a resource that provide for the human needs now, essential for the human survival in the future. It is often the only value of biological resource that are reflected in the uh, biodiversity. Indirect values of biodiversity. It deals with the primarily with functions of ecosystem. Do not normally appear in national accounting system, but they may outweigh direct values when they are computed. Reflect the value of biological diversity to the society. Reflect the value of biological diversity to the society locally or at large rather than to the individuals or corporate entities. It deals with the primarily with the function of ecosystem, do not normally appear in the national accounting system, but they may outweigh the direct values when they are computed, reflect the value of biological diversity to the society locally or at large rather than to the individual or corporate entities. Direct values often derive from the indirect values. Okay, they are going to derive from the indirect values of biodiversity. Direct values we are going to take from the indirect values. Harvested species of plants, animals are supported goods and services provided by their environment. Direct values often derive from the indirect values because harvested species of plants, animals are supported goods and services provided by the environment. Two types of indirect values are non-conceptive value. Uh, in that non-conceptive values of biodiversity, two types of indirect values are non-conceptive value. In that social values, ethical values, aesthetic values, and optional values. Okay, non-conceptive values. These are the indirect values of biodiversity in the ecosystem function. Okay, social values, ethical values, aesthetic values, and option values. These are indirect values of ecosystem functions such as watershed protection, photosynthesis, regulation, or climate and the production of soil. Pollination, habitat for the other species. Pollination, habitat for the other species. These are comes under the indirect values of biodiversity such as watershed protection, photosynthesis, regulation of climate and production of soil. Pollination, habitat for the other species. Social value. Some of the examples for the social value. Biodiversity in India, particularly in important for its religious, spiritual, and other cultural uses. Biodiversity in India, particularly, is important for its religious, spiritual, and other cultural uses. Many plants and animals have the ritual significance. The entire ecosystem is utilized for cultural and spiritual purpose. The entire ecosystem is utilized for the cultural and spiritual purpose. Biodiversity, particularly in India, is important for the religious, spiritual, and other cultural uses. The many plants and animals have the ritual significance. The entire ecosystem is utilized for the cultural and spiritual purpose. Some of the examples of the social value are almost auspicious flowers offered in temples are hibiscus. Hibiscus flower is used in the temples offered for the goddess Kali. Datura flower for the Shiva. Gujarati Sami. Okay, it is sacrificial fights. Skate value are attached to patches of forest believed to be a abode of gods, ancestors, and utilized only for the prayers and related to the rituals. A network of such skate grows in still in evidence in some parts of the India. Okay, these are the examples. Auspicious flowers like hibiscus that is offered in the temples for the goddess god Kali. Datura flower to Shiva. Gujarati Sami used in the sacrificial fights. Skate value are attached to patches of forest believed to be abode of goddess ancestors, utilized only for the prayer and related rituals. Network of such skate grows still in evidence in some parts of India. Ethical values of biodiversity. Ethical values of biodiversity. Here, regardless of our own material self-interest, we should treat the nature respectfully. Okay, regardless of our own material self-interest, we should treat the nature respectfully. Enlightening the self-interest, arguing that preserving biodiversity and developing our knowledge of its will make us better and happier people. Make us our better and happier people. Nearly everyone enjoys wildlife and joys make of lives good lives. Everyone enjoys wildlife and joys makes our lives good life. Loss of biodiversity could very well limit the creative energies of people in the future, thus restricting the development. Some examples of these aesthetic values. Aesthetic is nothing but beauty. Wildflowers in Glacier National Park. Beauty of wildflowers in Glacier National Park. Hiking, mountain climbing are physically, intellectually, and emotionally satisfying. People spend 10 of the billions of dollars annually in these pursuits. Proof enough for their value. Option value and their examples. Option value are intangible values of biodiversity is the option value. Intangible values of biodiversity, that keeping the options for the future and simply knowing that certain species are exist in the future. Certain species are the future exist in the future. The species potential to provide an economic benefit to human society at a point in the future is the option value. Species potential to provide economic benefit to human society at some point in the future is called as option value. As the need of society change, so must methods of satisfying these needs. Option value of species could be only recently utilized by the human beings. Recently utilized by the human beings. What are the examples of this option value? Health agencies, pharmaceutical companies are the examples of the option value of biodiversity, making the major effort to collect and screen species for the compounds that have ability to fight the cancer. Some cases, well-known species have been found to have exactly these properties needed to deal with significant human problem. Valuing the non-use values. Valuing the non-use values. In this, non-use values, including the bequest and existence values, usually always measured using some of the forms like CVM, contingent valuation. We are using this as a contingent valuation. Existence values usually always measured using the CVM. Cultural values, these are the cultural values very important in non-use values. Example, Lake 7 in Armenia. Values may be small per person, a few dollars, but large when they are aggregated. Example in Armenia. Note, non-use values are usually harder to sell to decision makers, but for some types of biodiversity, example for panda, blue whale, the non-use value account for almost all of the economic value because result in the TEV evolution. Some non-use values of biodiversity, example panda, the blue whale, non-use value account for the almost all of the economic value measured in the TEV valuation. Economic values. Economic values, assessing the benefits and cost of protecting the biological resources, providing the basis for determining the total value of any protected area or other system of biological resources. System of biological resources. The value of conserving the biological resources can be considerable. Conservation should be seen in the form of economic development. Biological resources have economic values. Investment in conservation should be judged in the economic terms. Valuation is the easiest for the direct use. Value is quite difficult for the indirect use value. Valuation is easiest for the direct use values and it is difficult for the non-use direct indirect use values. Very difficult for the non-use values. Value of a tree. Okay, a tree that lives for the 50 years generates 5.3 lakh worth of oxygen, recycles 6.4 lakhs worth of fertility. Tree that lives for the 50 years generates how much amount of value of a tree is 5.3 lakh worth of oxygen it generates and 6.4 lakh worth of fertility facilitates for 6.4 lakh worth of soil erosion control, creates a 10.5 lakh worth of air pollution control, provides 5.3 lakh worth of shelter for the birds and animals. Besides, it providing flowers, fruits and timber. When one tree falls or felled, something worth more than 3.39 lakhs is lost. Okay, because of one tree fell down, it leads to the loss of 3.39 lakhs. Total income value TEV, total income value approach and biodiversity. Total income value approach and biodiversity. Total income value is sum of the all the values, but in case of biodiversity, much of value may lie in indirect use or non-use portion. It includes both the use values and non-use values. Use values are indirect use, both consumptive and non-consumptive, indirect use and option values. Non-consumptive includes bequest values and existence values. Non-use values. Economic values are people dependent. Remember, there are few or no income economic values that are not directly linked to the human users or desires. Remember, there are few or non-economic values that are not directly linked to human users or desires. People often do not understand what the real question is. Therefore, market values may be poor reflection of ecosystem values of pure biological uniqueness. But the markets and prices often derive government and private actions. Valuing the non-measurable. Valuing the non-measurable. Some users or values associated with biodiversity are impossible to measure. They may include the following: unknown genetic material, global life support services, infinite value, cultural religious value. Example, in Hawaii, the native Hawaiians value the sea, the land, and very highly. Some uses or values associated with biodiversity are impossible to measure. They may include unknown genetic material, global life support, infinite value, cultural religious in Hawaii, native Hawaiians value sea in land very highly. These are the valuing the non-measurable. The references we are going to follow for the environmental sustainability is sustainability principles and practices. Sustainability principles and practices. Routledge, Taylor and Francis Group 2017. Responsibility for teaching sustainability, Journal of Sustainability Education. These are the two references we are going to follow for the environmental sustainability. One is sustainability principles and practices.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.